Christian parenting. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. You're listening to the All Mom Does podcast, part of the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Today on the All Mom Does podcast, I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. Rob Kenney is with me. He is somebody who's going to help us make sure that we are getting our kids equipped. And if we miss some steps, he has some ideas for how we can resource them to help them know how to do some basic things in life that they need. Rob, thanks so much for being with me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thanks so much for having me on, Julie. I appreciate it.
Now, you are something that, I got to be honest, Rob, for a guy in our ages and stages, I wouldn't often think that part of your CV would include that you are a YouTube star, but you're a YouTube star.
Yeah, that happened kind of by accident, actually. When I started my channel, I just thought I was going to help 30 or 40 people and wanted to kind of pass along some knowledge, some things that I'd learned over the years the hard way, and just wanted to kind of put it in one spot so it might be useful to a small group of people. And then, it went crazy last May.
These are my favorite stories, and I do a lot of work in the marketing arena and in the strategy arena. And your story is one of those, again, that I always have to stop and say to somebody, but listen, we can do all the things and we can do all the things right. But there is such a thing as a divine serendipity where somebody just tries to put some good out in the world and just gets a God wink like you did. So congratulations on the way that you've been able to speak into people's lives. But let's back up a little bit. Tell my listeners who you are, where you live, and kind of some of your experiences up to this point.
Yeah, so one real quick thing. It's definitely a God thing. When this thing happened, I was in a fetal position, crawled up in my bed crying, going, God, stop. I don't know what just happened,
Yeah.
And it was scary because, my channel, all of a sudden seeing my face everywhere that's scary. I'm an introvert. The channel started in April of last year. Because of COVID, we were quarantined. I didn't have any more excuses. I thought of the idea like several years ago because I talked to my adult kids all the time about adulting, trying to prepare your kids for adulting. You do the best you can, I tried to include them in all kinds of things, building a fence. And, we've got pictures of them helping me with all that stuff. But, there's just some things you don't know that you don't know until you get out in life and you go, how do I do that?
Right.
And so, you do the best you can, I think, to try to train them because my wife and I both wanted them to be functioning adults that people like to be around, right? I didn't want them to be the one that went over to somebody's house and just sat on the couch and they were waited on. I wanted them to get there and help around, get you
right.
do your part. We want to be invited back.
So, there is that goal.
Yeah. So I talk to my adult kids all the time about adulting, and my daughter leads a youth group at her church, and she talks to different people of all walks of life, and she was wondering, what do people do that don't have this resource that she has where she can call me anytime and we talk. And I thought back to my childhood, and my dad left when I was 14. I went to live with my brother, who was 9 years older than me. And I'm ancient, so YouTube wasn't around when I was, I'll be 57 this year, and YouTube wasn't around. But I thought, what a great way that I could at least maybe share some of the knowledge that I had to learn the hard way. How to shave and how to tie a tie and how to change your tire and anything and everything around the house to the extent of my knowledge. I'll run out of material at some point, but how to fish, a lot of little things that maybe you didn't get a chance to learn. And I wanted to do it in a calm way, inviting anybody and everybody to come in and, try to empower people. So when it first kind of was out there, people were saying, that's nice, he's helping young men. Well, it's not just young men. I want everybody to know. Everybody. I've had an 80-year-old woman reach out to me and say, thanks, Dad. That's what I want. I want anybody, I want it to be a safe place where anybody can come in and learn how to do things. So.
Right. And, it really is interesting where we do have these gaps. The name of the YouTube channel and the primary message of it is, Dad, how do I? And it is interesting. You and I were talking about, there is a whole body of research. And of course, not just young people, because we see that, for example, in in the circumstance of the 80-year-old woman who reached out to you, there were people who simply by cultural norms at the times, guys weren't taught to do this and females weren't taught to do that. So we've got a generation who have some gaps in their skill sets because of that kind of conditioning. But then we've also found something really interesting, and this has to do with a lot of young people reaching adulthood today and parents who helicoptered, parents who really tried to do everything for their kids. They had a very concierged experience in childhood. And to the point that we are finding major universities who are offering classes, some of them making it an absolute essential in life skills, things from how to do laundry to how to write a check or take care of bills, things that parents, in being so well intentioned in trying to give their children these beautiful Disney-fied childhoods. And perhaps because of the way they ran their households, in terms of maybe they were able to outsource having certain things done. But a lot of times for a lot of us, when you're a young adult, there's not going to be a cleaning service that can come in. You can't hire an accountant. These are things that you have to know how to do. We're finding that there are major schools who are realizing this gap in some of our young people's experiences and saying, oh, we've got to go back and have classes on this. And so I feel like this is one of those places where you're offering that kind of experience. Now, you talk about having been one of 7 kids and having had a dad who left when you were still in your early teen years. That's part of what generated this heartbeat for you, is wanting to really make sure that people had access to this information. What are some gaps that you felt like you had when you entered adulthood that you wanted to address first?
I started with just a few simple things like how to shave, because I just kind of had to figure that out on my own. I asked around, I got pretty good about just asking people because I don't know, or how to tie a tie. I learned that from my roommate, and paying attention to the knot. I say that in my video because it's true. You got to kind of pay attention as you're going along because you're building it. So just little hints like that I've learned to maybe save somebody some trouble. One thing that's interesting too is because I told my daughter when I first started it, there's so much more to being a dad or a mom than just running around fixing things. It's kind of a skill that I kind of had to develop, but I also wanted to be able to share my heart a little bit. I did one on attitude. We're in charge of our attitude, because I would like to pour some of that stuff into the next generation so that stop and think about this for a little bit, so that you understand the ramifications of your decisions, and I've done a dad chat on integrity too, just talking about what that looks like. We're all fallen human beings, so we do the best we can, but if I can help you get back on track if you've gotten off track. Or I've talked about forgiveness too. That was a big thing for me. In my book, Forgiving My Dad, it was good for me. It was hard, though, and I can't speak for anybody in this. Don't get me wrong, because I know that people have been through so many different levels of things that they need to be able to forgive or forgive themselves for. So I can only speak from my own experience. It was hard for me, and I share that in my book. I just got done recording the audio version of it, and when I was reading it, I had to say, stop, I need to cry for a little bit. So
take a minute,
because I was like, this is me. This is my life story. This is hard still. This is 42 years ago that this happened. It still kind of, chokes me up, because that's some pretty tough scars that I had to deal with. But it's in my own best interest to forgive. Again, I can only speak for myself, but for me, it was freeing to forgive. As soon as I made that decision to forgive, is like, okay, I'm no longer going to hold that against you. And the Lord has forgiven me much. Who am I to hold that against somebody? A big thing that I say about that is, it's that saying about you drinking poison and hoping it somehow hurts that other person.
Right.
It's destroying me.
Right.
I'm hurting myself. I need to come to grips with this and think about this correctly.
Right. You have a unique perspective because demographically, you're able to see which of your YouTube videos are the ones that are resonating the most quickly or gaining those eyes the most quickly. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you're finding that people are coming to you for right now? And does it surprise you, or do you feel like, yeah, that makes sense?
Well, a couple of videos that I talked about, I'm proud of you, saying I'm proud of you, a legitimate dad saying I'm proud of you, resonated really with, and I get comments all the time, I've never heard that from my parents, and never heard that. I'm like, that's just so sad, But there was one early on where somebody said, I'm just watching you tie a tie and I'm crying. I'm just sobbing watching you tie a tie. It's just because it's that dad connection that maybe they never had, or maybe their dad left or their dad passed on. And so that, I guess it's all of that. I had no idea. I thought I'm just tying a tie.
Right.
Got a lot of, women watching me do that or shave. I had one gal say, I just love the dad time that I'm getting just watching you shave. She said, I missed that from when my dad has passed. So I'll put your YouTube video on and just watch that. And
yeah. That makes me think, Rob, that we sometimes discount the little daily moments with our kids and the importance of that. I can get really focused on throwing the huge Christmas or planning the trip that's supposed to be the thing that is embedded in somebody's memory. But it's interesting when you said that about shaving, I thought, oh, yeah, I recall times of just kind of chattering at my dad while he was preparing for the day. And those are at least as strong a memories, if not maybe more so, than some of the things that maybe my parents put more effort into to make a whole production. So those places where we just interact with our kids in our day to day have a lot more power than we can think. Do you seem to find that with what you're finding on this living demographic you're developing watching the YouTube channel?
Absolutely. One thing that we always tried to do with our kids was create certain things. Like I recently showed how to cook biscuits, American biscuits. Mm-hmm. Apparently in the UK, these are called cookies. And so I've got people telling me, those are cookies, Dad. Those aren't biscuits.
That's part of the American Revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I've always called a biscuit. So I'm going with it. Like once a month, I'd say, Dad's making biscuits. It's biscuit day, and we kind of play it up and make it into this big deal when really it's a simple pleasure that doesn't cost a whole lot. And we just kind of created those memories through that. We always went and got the Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. We went to a farm and cut it down and hauled it home. And that was just kind of a memory. And then I think another thing too is, sitting around the table and eating dinner is so important, and turning your phone off and being present, being there. Because it's easy. I think we're all distracted. Right. I'd be lying if I didn't say I want to check my phone. But if you can just set aside a half hour, even just set it aside, maybe then it grows into an hour or whatever, where you're just enjoying each other and getting to be heard. I'm actually one of 8 kids. I'm number 7 out of 8.
You're number 7. Okay. Well, we have 8 kids, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what you said. So my wife actually is one of 8 too.
Well, look at that. What are the odds? Okay.
And one thing that I struggled with, because our, the dysfunctionality of our family was, since I was number 7, we would eat dinner together, but I always felt like I didn't have a voice. It just kind of happened because my older siblings were older and what could he possibly bring to the table? And so I struggled with that for the longest time. And, you still have birth order type of stuff where when we get back together, I still kind of feel like I'm little Robbie, kind of falling in line here. So I made it a point with our kids. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Let's hear what you have to say and try to make sure that everybody kind of had their voice and you got to check in with them. And it's just a great time to make sure you carve that out. Otherwise, man, they're 5, then they're 10, then they're 15, then they're 20, and they're gone.
Yeah, and they're out. Yeah.
It happens so quick.
Yeah. And, I do think it's a great reminder for me, for other parents, that sometimes that quietest kid, or that kid who may get kind of dampened in their volume because of their birth order where they fall in line, maybe the kid who, it's easy to forget because they don't make a lot of noise about it. They don't demand the attention, and yet they still need it. With my youngest, my number 8, he's such an easygoing personality, and he very much acquiesces, even at the dinner table. So one of the things we've been doing is he and I are trolling all of the local burger places, and we're going to take a vote on what we think the best burger is. And again, Rob, it's not something that is really complicated. It's not really expensive, but it gives he and I a little bit of a mission and something that's unique that I haven't done with the other kids. And just like you were saying, this is not some grand thing that I came up with all on my own. It was me all of a sudden realizing, wow, have I heard that kid give me 3 complete sentences in the last couple of weeks? Because he has siblings who have really big personalities and are doing comedy sketches every night. And we're just kind of watching that and forgetting that there's this other little guy over here. He's not so little anymore, but there's this other person over here that we need to be intentional about in terms of paying attention. Rob, you've tapped into something that I think is really fascinating. my husband wandered into a corner of social media and had a response he did not expect. He got on TikTok to just begin to try to understand what that whole world was like, and posted something about what he wished that his 24-year-old self had known. And it was just a very simple 60-second. We turned around twice, and he's had like close to 200,000, views of this thing, and all kinds of people commenting and asking him questions and on and on. And it kind of sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, just noticing guys who are not in any way trying to take over social media or trying to do things that are really slick, or who are just saying, here's who I am as a man at this age with this experience. And here's some things that I want you to know and I wish I had known. The resonance, Rob, is just astounding to me. And it makes me ponder, and for you as well, with this unexpected wave that you've had coming your way. Obviously, it speaks to a deep need that is there. How can we make sure that we're keeping it valid? I like the transparency and the honesty of it right now. And then I could see that it could get really easy to make things kind of slick and all that. And it's not wrong to seize an opportunity, but how do we make sure we stay in an authentic voice when we stumble upon an audience, whether it's by social media or another means, and people are telling us, wow, I really resonate with what you're saying, making sure that we're staying true to that first moment that really introduced us to this particular group of people?
Yeah, that's a tough question that I've been trying to navigate, because I'm still working full time, because we're close to retirement and I don't want to pull up short. But at the same time, if this could be something that we could make a living at, but to your point, I don't want to be a walking billboard. I don't want, I get people reaching out to me all the time wanting to sponsor my videos, and it's like, I just don't know what I do with that, how that fits. I want to remain authentic. My videos, if you watched them, are pretty straightforward. I don't have a lot of bells and whistles. I'm shooting them on my phone and I'm editing them with an app on my phone and then uploading them. So there's not a whole lot of production value. I don't want to get away from that. I'd like to keep it wholesome, where it's just, hey, I'm just trying to share some information with you. And early on, I would talk to the camera like I was talking to my own kids. And I'm trying to keep that going, where, is this really something I would pass along to my own kids? If it is, then that's what I want. This is kind of advice. Like I did how to check your oil instead of how to change your oil. Because in my area, I can get an oil change for $30. And by the time you buy all the stuff, and return the oil to get it recycled, it's not really worth my time. And so I kind of shared that in the video. And then also banging your knuckles and trying to get that oil filter off. I've done it all. I've struggled with all that. And so it's like, I'll just let somebody else do this now. But I got pushback because people were like, oh, well, I really want to know how to change my oil. So I ended up doing a video on how to change your oil too. But still said I probably wouldn't recommend it, at least in my area, because you can get it done for $30.
But I love that too, because that is a father's voice, right? I mean, well, here's the skill set, but here's also the higher reasoning behind, is it worth your time? What is the real cost involved? There are lots of things, I think, and anything from just simple tasks and chores that need to be done all the way up to having a different mindset and attitude and on, that when we're able to marry it to, look, yeah, you can do it this way, but experience teaches that maybe this is more efficient or this is a better use of your time. Sometimes we need that guidance too, not just the how to, but actually discerning some of the best paths to take. And it's that discernment piece that, in addition to simply having a skill set, which maybe some of us missed, maybe forgot to give our kids, maybe didn't get in some places, that discernment piece is the piece to me that often really becomes more of that parental voice that some of us wish that we had. And I know particularly as we get older, it sure feels like it'd be nice to be able to take something to somebody and say, what should I do here? Which way should I do this? And rather than just, how do I do it? Which is also great. But a big part of how do I is, should I? So I think that it's great that you're actually, bringing that into the fold as well. Rob, what I love in your messaging, and having found yourself to be an accidental YouTuber, what I do love in this is something I've heard a pastor say before, which is see a need, meet a need. See a need, meet a need. a lot of times I'll have people say to me, I want to understand my calling or my purpose. And I love all the esotericness of that. And as somebody who's a creator, I am certainly always looking for, oh, is this a thing that's just filling me with passion to go chase this or create that or develop this or whatever. But man, at its essence, I think a lot of times what God really wants from us is for us to just see a need and meet it. I feel like that's really what you did. Does that kind of have a core to you of that's what's going on?
Yeah, I would say so. And I have to just share with you, because of my background of my dad leaving, I determined at a young age that was a priority for me. I wanted to make sure that we created memories. I was there for my kids. It was a big deal for my wife and I as well. Obviously we're on the same page working through this and figuring it out. And we did it. We raised good adults. That was the goal. Not to raise good kids. I say that all the time. We raised good adults. And they're there now. My son's in Virginia, very successful. My daughter has her own business. She's here in the area. So now what? Well, we went to Rome in 2019. And you go there, and this place was amazing. It was the center of the world, really.
Right.
They were the ultimate power. And now all that's left is ruins. We went to the Colosseum, and then you see the Forum, and it's all just crumbling, And so it kind of really stuck out in my head is, what now, Lord? What would you have me to do now? I've still got some life to live. My kids are grown and we're heading into retirement. Then what? Do I just kind of go off and, travel a little bit and then I die? So I think that's part of it, is like, this is an idea that could kind of leave a legacy. Didn't know it would be, again, on this such a grand scale, but I thought, if I can help one or two people, then that's powerful, right? It's that story about the starfish thrown back into the ocean. Well, that one cares that I threw it back. And I share that too about dads hanging in there and think long term. That was one of the things I talked about with integrity. Men tend to run after shiny objects, is how I put it, because then you can fill in the blank of what that might mean. But hang in there, because there's a void. If you decide that, hey, I've had it, I'm done, well, you leave a ripple effect when you make that decision. So please think long and hard about that. And, I can't, not judging anybody, just saying, please don't take that lightly, because there's a lot of ramifications that come out of your decision to do what you're going to do, what you're going to run after that you think might please you, or that sort of thing. And so it goes back to the starfish thing too. If I could help one dad to hang in there that is thinking about bailing, that's worth it.
Right. I think too that we're in an interesting season for families because we are trying to chase so many things and do so many things well. And it is interesting to me because as more and more women are working from home, entering the workforce, we've been wrestling this for 2, 3, 4 decades now, just how to try to balance all of that. It's interesting because my grandmothers both worked and had their kids, and it was all, they juggled all of it and did all the things. They're entered in a season where we saw for a period of time more women be home with their children, and a lot of care and keeping went on to those moms, as a lot of dads were the ones who were trying to provide financially. Then we re-entered a new season where we do have mom and dad a lot of times working a lot and trying to balance all of it. But what I'm seeing is over the last few years is this burgeoning sense again that dads have got to be engaged. And it seems like we went through a period of time generationally where dads a little bit got a hall pass because they were the primary income earner. And now we seem to have a lot of moms who are saying that's not acceptable anymore, to excuse yourself from what's going on here. How do you think we're going to be able to re-engage guys? I think there are guys who are very engaged. Like they really wanted to do things a little differently. They wanted to be extremely involved with their babies and their toddlers, and they learned alongside with their wives how to be great parents. But I do see kind of this retro attitudinal shift sometimes where it's a little bit more, hey, she's the one who wanted babies. I got a career to chase. How do we begin to make some of those shifts for guys to help them understand that, yeah, you can build the career thing and that's great, but family life is also something that's being built at the same time?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a balance for sure, and I get it because it's like, well, I'm trying to provide, I'm running
Right.
after this, and I got to do that, and you definitely got to really constantly be thinking about your priorities. And I certainly wasn't always perfect because I didn't have a great example, and so I was doing the best I could, and asking for forgiveness of my kids was a pretty common thing, just, hey, I didn't handle that. I snapped at you today and I shouldn't have done that. And when we would pray at night, that was always something we did too, is to pray at night. And then it allowed me the opportunity to confess to my father that, hey, I'm sorry that I didn't handle that. And my kids would be able to hear that I'm accountable to you for what I'm doing. I'm hoping, again, if I can just help one, let's make being a dad a cool thing. That, hey, this is pretty cool. It's a cool opportunity that you get. Don't let that pass by. Make the effort to make that a priority, because boy, it's gone so quickly. The window is like, oh my goodness, what? You're gone?
Yeah.
But wait, I had all these ideas that I had for us. Well, that's why you got to be intentional, and you got to stay on top of it, and you got to constantly be checking in with them. As you know, with 8 kids, each one's at a different stage. You
Right.
can't treat a 5-year-old like your 10-year-old or what have you.
Nope.
And you're having to constantly reevaluate and figure out, okay, now where are you at now? Or giving them responsibility as they grow up. How we always did it, I try to keep things simple so that, I don't muddy the waters too much, but give them a responsibility, and then there's consequences. If you don't handle that responsibility, well, then I got to kind of rein it back in. And then we go along a little bit more and here's a little more responsibility, and how you handle this will determine whether you get more responsibility, right? And so there's certain things that are a privilege. They're not a right. That was always big in our house. We would always say that, this is a privilege. This
Right.
isn't a right. You don't, just by being a human, you just don't automatically get a phone. You abuse the phone, I take the phone back.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think those things, and to not be shy in that lane, to know that it is important for kids to have those boundaries. And yes, we probably oversold on consequences and discipline too hard in some generations past. And if some of us experience that, we may oversell the other direction too far and try to make everything too much sparkles and sunshine. And so to have that place where we are in balance, I think is such great wisdom. Well, Rob Kenney, what a delight to talk to you. The book is Dad, How Do I? Thank you so much for your time today, and all of the great things you're doing, just a simple step at a time, and just seeing a need and meeting a need. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it.
You'll find more from this episode on the show notes. Be sure and check them out at allmomdoes.com. And wanted to ask you a big favor. Be sure and go to wherever you are listening to this podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us get the word out about the podcast. Can't wait to see you next time on the All Mom Does podcast.